What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for joining me to talk about movies. I really appreciate that. Today we're going to be talking about probably one of the most important movies that has come out in the last 20 years or so. And of course, if you already read the title, you know that we're going to be talking about the 2008 film that kicked off an entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, Iron Man. But before we get started, if you guys can please just do me a favor, like the video, comment, do all that YouTube stuff for me. It's going to help out the channel a lot. And by doing so, you guys are also inadvertently helping me move to Hawaii because that is my dream. But yeah, guys, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Let's talk about Iron Man. This is probably one of my favorite MCU movies, not even just because it's the first one, but because it's such a well-paced movie. I think that the director, Jon Favreau, is a very good filmmaker. He makes like really heartfelt stories, and he pays a lot of attention to characters and character development. Obviously, it's the first MCU movie, but we have to talk about it as a film before we even start talking about the rest of the universe. Because at the time, there was no shared cinematic universe like this. The MCU is 30 movies in right now. When Iron Man was being pitched to be made, apparently Marvel sold the rights to Spider-Man, the X-Men, all that, to Sony and Fox so that they can actually make enough money to stay afloat. And they pushed all of that money, well, some of that money, into making their own movie, which was Iron Man. And this was a huge gamble. I mean, like, they didn't really have a lot of support going into it. They kind of just put all their chips onto one bet, and it cashed out for them. I think the biggest bet, though, we can talk about in retrospect is going to be the leading man, Robert Downey Jr. He had a lot of kind of issues with drugs and alcohol abuse. Of course, before that, we know that he was a fantastic actor. However, a lot of people still cast their doubts on him playing a leading role. And again, especially after all the controversy, not a lot of people believed in this movie. You know, but from what it looks like, it seems like it is basically a match made in heaven. Jon Favreau, he basically handpicked Robert Downey Jr. to play Iron Man and Tony Stark. And he kind of he bodies it. I mean, it's a fact at this point. When you think of Tony Stark, you think of Robert Downey Jr., and that's all credit to Robert Downey Jr. He's a fantastic actor, and he does amazing in this movie. This movie, I would say for the time, was fairly low budget. It cost $140 million, and for example, the year before, Spider-Man 3 actually came out in 2007. And that cost over, I think, $250 million, just off the top of my head. I have a laptop right in front of me, but I'm not going to use it. It's a smaller movie compared to all the other MCU projects that we've had recently. So, kind of the first movie to kickstart, not even just the MCU, but superhero movies in general. You did have X-Men, you did have Spider-Man, but those mentalities were different. At the time, there were one-off stories, which is cool. But this was like a one-off story, and there's potential to do more with this character. We'll get into kind of the future of what this movie set up later in the video. But let's just talk about the direction. I wanted to talk more about Jon Favreau, how good he is at handling this character and this story, because we start the movie off in like a Humvee, okay? And we get the first introduction to Tony Stark. You see these soldiers basically looking at him as if he's like a king. As soon as the movie starts, Tony is super snarky. He's very fast. He's witty, and you kind of love the character, but you also hate to love the character because he's so like cocky. And then, of course, we see the Humvee basically blown up by one of Stark's own missiles, because Tony Stark, in this world, he makes weapons of mass destruction and sells them to whoever pays the most. So he's captured. We get into the Iron Man title scene, and then we flash back, 36 hours? And we see more of his background. And the way that this was set up really makes you feel for the character, because if we started off at the Stark Expo, I don't think I would have cared for this character as much as I did. And Jon Favreau knows that. He knows how to pace the story well. He grabbed your attention in the first 5 minutes with that kind of action scene of Tony Stark getting captured. And then we flash back to, his story and, flesh out the character a lot more. A lot of people forget that Terrence Howard is actually in this movie. He was playing Rhodey, James Rhodes, aka War Machine. He was playing him before Don Cheadle, and I actually really like Terrence Howard in this role. I think he's fair to say. I think he's kind of a better Rhodes, in my opinion. He kind of foils Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark a little better than I think Don Cheadle does, but that's just personal opinion. We obviously can't talk about this movie if we don't talk about that part. Gwyneth Paltrow is also in the movie, and Jeff Bridges. So you have all these stars, and Jon Favreau just brilliantly kind of weaves them together in one movie without things feeling too cluttered or people getting left out. Everything just feels so compact and tight, and it's a good thing because there were a lot of ways that this movie could have went wrong. Also, in this movie, you get to see kind of the tone of how the MCU would handle things in the future. Of course, the writing is super snappy. You get a bunch of those little quips that you basically see in every MCU movie. It's kind of become a complaint nowadays, but this movie, the one that kicked it off, it was fresh. It felt like a comedy. You were watching something happen in real life. It just felt very, very, very good. It didn't feel super formulaic. Obviously, now looking back at it in retrospect, you definitely know that the MCU has a formula, but it all started with this movie. So the movie itself is amazing. I think it's one of the best MCU movies still. I don't think a lot has topped it. This is just A1 storytelling, A1 character development, and really good performances by the entire cast. There's one thing that we didn't talk about, though, and that is the post-credit scene. Now, post-credit scenes weren't invented by Marvel Studios, but damn, they were pretty much utilized perfectly by Marvel Studios. In the post-credit scene, the S.H.I.E.L.D. director, Nick Fury, visits Tony Stark talking about setting up a team. And obviously that leads into the Avengers. We've seen 4 Avengers movies, so we know how that plays out. But at the time, nobody could even fathom that this was happening. They were just planting a seed, and it paid off in the long run. This was obviously one of the most legendary cameos of all time, and they apparently they worked really hard to keep this a secret, and it worked out. But yes, guys, that is my review for Iron Man. I love the movie. What did you guys think of the movie? It's obviously 14 years old at this point, but if you guys have seen it, let me know down below in the comment section. I know everybody has seen it. This is just the first of many videos I'm going to be doing reviewing the MCU. I'm trying to review them all in order. Bear with me because there's a lot of movies to talk about. This is literally the biggest shared cinematic universe in history. That's all the time I got for you guys. I'm gonna edit this video and start on the next one, so if you guys can just do me a favor, leave a like down below, comment, subscribe if you guys like the content. I do a lot of movie related content on this channel, so you guys can find me here. Anyways, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me and talk about movies. I really appreciate that, and yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one.